Fresh, whole, unprocessed foods are repositories of life force energy. The yogis call that prana. The young are full of it. We're always telling toddlers and puppies to get down, calm down, slow down, and sit while we're drinking coffee and eating energy bars in hopes of getting some of that exuberance back. But we can get it, and much more reliably, from whole, unprocessed foods that nourish every cell, support the body's self healing propensity, and taste amazing. Hey, everybody. I'm Victoria Moran. Welcome to the Main Street Vegan Podcast. And we are going to be celebrating food and health today. We're going to get a little bit serious on the health side in our second segment, when we're going to be talking about Hashimoto's thyroid issues and a couple of women who are expert about that. And in the first segment, we're going to be celebrating the food that brings about the health with somebody that I'm sure you already know and love if you have ever been online. And that is Plant Use founder, Carleigh Bodrug. So Carleigh is with us today, a famous blogger and video creator. She creates recipes that are good for us and our planet. Starting from a personal blog, she now has a popular website, digital meal planner, weekly podcast, and a vibrant vegan brand. And next month, February 15th, 2022, Plant You, 140 plus ridiculously easy, amazingly delicious plant-based oil-free recipes is coming out as Carleigh's very first book. I'll bet the first of dozens and dozens. Welcome, Carleigh.
Oh my goodness, what a wonderful introduction, Victoria. I am so grateful to be here today talking everything plant-based food.
Well, I can tell you just love the food. It excites you and makes you happy, and then it makes other people happy.
I truly do, and I think that food is something we all have in common. We all I think the majority of us at least are huge passions about food. So mine just happens to be with plant-based food.
So, what's your story? How did it all start?
So definitely was not always plant-based, however, always a food lover. A lot of my college friends and roommates cannot believe my journey today because I was very stereotypically unhealthy in my early 20s and teens. I went to university college with a freezer packed full of mini pizzas and tater tots. I could get away with that somehow at the time, eating that unhealthy, but it wasn't until 2015 that the World Health Organization announced that red and processed meat were now classed as group 2 and group 1 carcinogens. Now, back when I was 11 years old, my dad was diagnosed with stage 2 colon cancer, went through chemotherapy, thank goodness is a survivor. However, that very much stuck with me. And I remember at the time when that news came out being just very shocked because my dad had gone through this very invasive surgery and the chemo, and we had gone back to eating the very thing that could have contributed to the cancer. So definitely a glass of milk with dinner each night. Meal wasn't complete for breakfast, lunch, or dinner without a big piece of meat, whether it be bacon or steak at dinner. And I started to kind of look and challenge this ideology I'd grown up thinking that we really need the meat on our plate to be satisfied and to be healthy. So started reading those landmark books like Eat to Live by Dr. Joel Fuhrman and How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger, dove into the documentaries and was really shocked because it felt like honestly like we had been lied to, especially with the Canada Food Guide with dairy and meat like mainstays on there at the time. It was like, what is happening here? So then at the time I was living in a bachelor apartment up in Northern Ontario, Canada, and was actually working as a radio host, believe it or not, and started teaching myself to cook some plant-based meals. And I remember going on Pinterest and like searching the word vegan or plant-based and getting really overwhelmed because at the time all I saw were like these beautiful pictures of Nourish bowls and carved avocados, spiralized zucchini, and I'm like, I can't do this. So I started by veganizing some of the recipes I'd grown up eating. So for example, swapping the ground beef in my mom's bolognese sauce for lentils and just making those simple swaps over time. And I really couldn't believe how great I felt and wanted to tell the world. So that's kind of how Plant You started, and started sharing those really simple recipes, and they caught on.
Wow. And what about your childhood? I know you grew up on a hobby farm. And did that experience help you connect the dots?
Yes. So grew up on a hobby farm. We had chickens, horses, always animals in and out of the house that my sister's a vet tech now, but my dad and her would rehabilitate birds that would show up injured at the farm. And it's so interesting because my entire family always had this huge heart for animals, but then we'd sit down at dinner time and eat like dozens of chicken wings. So once I kind of made that health connection, I always say now I went plant-based for health initially, but I stayed vegan and plant-based for the animals because it's like opening Pandora's box, as you know. Once you once you learn one thing, it kind of all unravels, and it really hit home, especially when I got my own adopted my own pet, my cat Tut. You make this realization that the animals that like take up so much of your heart are no different than the animals on the farm, and those animals are equally as intelligent, equally beautiful, equally as deserving as a full life to those that we help and rehabilitate and take care of in our homes.
Yeah, I think that the question of the century is, why do you see that? Why do many of us see that? And why do other people not? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's just so ingrained in society that this is the way it is, that we don't question it and we don't want to question it. From what I've learned over the years of food blogging is that food is massively emotional and nostalgic. And I think one of the hardest parts of grasping with the idea of going plant-based or vegan is this idea that you need to give up those foods you grew up eating, or those like your mom's like chicken, etc. So I think people know, but they don't want to see. And then once you see, you can't go back. So you have to be ready to open those doors and really realize the truth. And to me now, and I mean, I'm sure you can relate, you almost just want to shake people and like scream it from the rooftops, but I don't know that that is always the most effective approach.
Yeah.
So I try to lead by sharing really, really tasty recipes and showing people that they can enjoy their favorite foods without animal products.
So, have you accomplished the greatest feat that any plant-based person can do, and that is convert your family?
Almost. So I'm so grateful that when I went plant-based, my mom and dad also went the majority plant-based. So they cook entirely plant-based in their home, but if they're out at a restaurant, might enjoy some animal products there, which my dad is now 70, my mom is 65. So I think that's a true testament that you can change at any age. It's pretty incredible. And I've also converted my fiance. I've been in a relationship with him for 10 years. And when I first went vegan, he was like, what is happening? Because he was a huge meat eater as well. And I think I threw everyone for a loop. And he is now like 99% plant-based, which is awesome. It's harder. It's hard to convince people you love because you want to like shake them and lecture, but I think I like the term attractivism, like leading from example and showing how much you've benefited from the lifestyle rather than kind of shoving the facts at them.
Yeah, that's totally where I've come from for a long time. There's something in the 12-step program's attraction rather than promotion. And it just really seems to work. When you've got something somebody wants, they're going to want to know how you got it. And something you have that I want is this knowledge about this zero waste way of cooking, because I'm trying to do more of that, just with the let's get rid of the plastic and that kind of stuff. And you've got this whole scrappy cooking series about transforming food scraps into really good food.
Yes, so this series has become so popular on my social media channels. The videos are seen by millions of people, and it's just this really simple concept of taking common food scraps and transforming them into delicious recipes. So, one that is a real hit, for example, would be transforming broccoli stems into a pesto or broccoli stem fries. And this really started because I was doing these things in my home already. I don't know about in the United States, but in Canada, grocery prices and fresh produce in particular have just gone up and up and up. And when you, beyond the food waste aspect, when you purchase like a head of broccoli, if you're throwing out the stems, you're throwing out like half of the broccoli, half of the nutrients. So I threw up a recipe one day. I think it was for like orange peel candy, not thinking much of it, that it would like hit so hard, and people just went crazy over it. So I started sharing more and more of my hacks. And at the end of the day, I think the statistics is something like 30 to 50% of food made for human consumption is wasted, which actually really contributes to like global warming, food waste, landfills filling up. So it's not a great thing. And if we can all make measures with ourselves to reduce our food waste, it can go a long way. And at the end of the day, I think these recipes do just make people think when they have something in their cart or in their hands, am I going to use this entire thing? Do I really need this? Which is my message at the end of the day.
Hmm. Well, that's exciting. I'm going to check those out. So, you used to be a radio host and a news anchor. You did marketing, and now you are a full-time online person. I think we call you an influencer. And what was that like? Both just so that we know, but also I'll bet some people are listening who are thinking, gosh, there's nothing more on earth I would want to do than what she does.
For sure. So it's been a process, like 6 years in the making. So I started the blog back in 2015 and started sharing some recipes online on Instagram, on my URL, plantu.com, and slowly gained some traction. And I moved from my radio job to then working at a hospital foundation in communications, while at the same time kind of working on this side of growing my platform and sharing like this was, I felt so pulled to do this. I cannot tell you that like I would work weekends, nights on like writing up recipes. And eventually I started a program. So it was releasing weekly PDF plant-based meal plans to help people go plant-based for $7.99 per month. And I was able to get enough members on that program that enabled me to leave my job at the time. And that was really the start. So once I was able to leave my job, I think I had 100,000 followers on Instagram at the time. It kind of just skyrocketed from there. I was able to obviously dedicate a lot more time to working on my content and started getting into this video aspect. I was then approached by a literary agent and was able to sign a cookbook deal, and then went on to TikTok. So it was really about like following my heart, my passion, and creating as much as possible day in, day out. I think I've put out a piece of content almost every single day for the last like 4 or 5 years, but it doesn't feel like work to me because I mean, I'm so motivated to spread the message of how incredible a plant-based and vegan lifestyle can be. And I hope I can continue. That's what I say every day. I do this every day because I hope tomorrow that I can wake up and continue doing this. So I'm excited to see how things are going and how the new cookbook will do.
Well, I know about books, and I think they're the most exciting thing on earth. It's like you're pregnant with them and you're working to get them out into the world, and you've got this due date, which is your pub date, your lovely February 15th pub date. So, was there anything different to you, or what was different about doing recipes for a cookbook versus the blog?
So I definitely in the cookbook wanted somebody to be able to pick this up and go plant-based if they wanted to. So I knew I wanted to include recipes for breakfast, lunch, dinner, dessert, appetizers, have a full scope and range. So the planning of that definitely took a lot of time. And then the recipe testing, like I obviously wanted these recipe tested to a T. Not that my blog recipes are not, but it's just the book is forever, right? It's printed on paper. So you want it to perfection. So the recipe testing process, I photographed the entire thing myself. So that was interesting. It was almost like a crash course on photography. But I'm one of the unique parts about the cookbook that I'm really, really proud of, and I think will help a lot of people is that there's a photo with every single recipe, but then there's also a photo of each of the individual ingredients that are used in the recipe above it. So from a glance, you can see immediately what you need to make the recipe. And also it helps with grocery shopping as well. So I had this whole vision of what I wanted the book to look like. And now that it's like in print and come to fruition, it's just the most surreal thing I have ever experienced in my life.
Oh, it's got to be really exciting. I can hardly wait to get my hands on a copy. And everybody, just in case you missed the title, Plant You, and we're talking YOU, 140 plus ridiculously easy, amazingly delicious, plant-based, oil-free recipes. So some of my vegan foodie buddies are going to hear that oil-free and say, oh, oh. Like it can't possibly taste good. So tell us why you do oil free and how it really can taste good.
So the reason I did oil free is because that's how I generally, for the most part, cook in my home. I'm certainly not one of those people who is like, oh, a recipe calls for oil and I won't make it. Like I'll use oil on occasion for sure. You'll even see it on my Instagram page. However, I think it's a very can be a very overused ingredient in the standard American diet. And it's extremely calorie and fat dense. So I just prefer to get my fat when I can from a whole food source. So for example, avocado, eating the avocado rather than the extracted oil and getting all the fiber and nutrients intact from the avocado rather than the oil. So I wanted this cookbook to be able to be used by people who are oil free, which there are many within the plant-based community. So there's a couple of unique cooking methods, usually using broth or water at the start, but it's very much the same. And what I tell people who are interested in the cookbook but like their oil is you can so easily just add oil to the recipes. So I have, I think, like 12 different soup recipes in the book. They all start probably with like sauteing onion, carrot, celery in a little bit of water or vegetable broth. Use your oil instead if you'd like to, or try it with the vegetable broth. And I promise you, you won't miss the oil because it doesn't have a lot of impact on flavor, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've been doing that the past few years as well, and it seems to work just fine. And my arteries would probably say, yeah, it's working fine. So let's talk about food, Carleigh, since you are a food whisperer, and I know from your Instagram, you just find all these bizarre foods. Like I saw one recipe you had found cacao like as it grows. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was some sort of sea creature until I read what was really going on there. So tell us about some of your favorite exotic foods and foods you've discovered.
So the cacao pod specifically, I was super grateful to have a company called Fruit Hunters send me like a package of these amazing exotic fruits. And one of them was a cacao pod. And I know you know from seeing it, but it is crazy to see how chocolate is made and what it comes from, because it literally looks like an alien, like the pods. So I would say I'm just very naturally curious person, and I love to see from like what a food looks like at the beginning of its process. For example, I actually have in the oven right now cookies made from aquafaba, which is like the water in a can of chickpeas. Like, I'm just so interested in food science and what you can create when you go down to the bare bones. So I'm always looking for things. I mean, if you're wanting to diversify your vegetables or fruit that you're eating in your diet, which diversity of plants is a super big key to a healthy gut and a healthy diet. I always suggest people look at their local Asian grocery store if you can, because they usually have a massive variety of vegetables and fruits that you can't get at kind of your standard grocery store. So I love to just go and look at the offerings of fruits and vegetables and play around when I find a new one.
Well, you do a beautiful job, and you are a wonderful photographer. You just look at these foods and get this incredible appreciation for nature and just how we're part of nature too. And it has to be that if we're nourishing ourselves with the foods that are in your pictures and your recipes, it just has to be better. So, one thing I wanted to ask you about too, Carleigh, is you have the meal plans, and I noticed you're still doing that, the $7.99 a month. And I've never subscribed to a meal plan service. And my question has always been, wouldn't you just be always running to the grocery store and trying to find something that you don't already have? What's a meal plan service like, and how does it work for people?
So I'm super grateful that over the past 4 years that my meal planner has turned into like a digital app. So basically what we do is we have like a database of over 500 plant-based recipes that me and I now am very thankful to have a recipe creator have developed that people can choose from, and we release weekly suggested plans, and these plans are actually are built around the concept of meal prep. So we always suggest that people, maybe if they can, set aside a couple of hours on Sunday and prep their meals. So go to the grocery store once, maybe twice per week, not going to the grocery store every day. And we send out these weekly plans, and people can drag and drop different meals into them if they want. And then there's also a grocery list that will populate depending on what meals you put in that you can check off at the grocery store. So it really simplifies plant-based eating in that way. It started as these like PDF rigid plans, but now it's like a completely customizable system that people can toggle serving sizes and feed their whole family, or if they're a single person, feed themselves.
That is so cool. And you can find out about all this stuff, listeners. PlantYouCookbook.com is a website. Plant You blog on Facebook, Plant You on Instagram, at Plant You on TikTok. So this woman is all over the map and certainly all over the internet. And you can take advantage of some of this amazing stuff going on. So you must hear, Carleigh, from your fans and followers about health benefits they're experiencing. Have you got some stories?
Absolutely. The biggest one I hear is digestion, which is actually the number one thing I heard when I experienced when I went plant based. Like, my digestion just improved so much. And I truly think it's because of the lack of fiber in the standard American diet. I think the statistic is something like over 90% of people in America are fiber deficient, yet all we seem to talk about or hear about is protein, which there's almost no cases of protein deficiency. So I think immediately that increase in fiber, people notice that they feel lighter, that they're regular, that their digestion is finally moving. The skin is another one that I experienced, and a lot of people message me and say, oh, my skin has never felt clearer or looked clearer. My skin is less oily when they kind of remove the oil from their diet. So it is truly, and I'm sure you can attest to this, the best feeling ever when you hear from someone that you influence them to go plant-based and they're reaping the many benefits.
And When you think about the overarching benefits of how the world is going to look 20 years from now because you're doing what you're doing today, what do you see? We've got about a minute and a half. Give us your prediction.
I really hope that my whole goal through this is that we can eliminate factory farming in the next 20 years, because I think that is just the most devastating from an animal and environmental level. So whether that's through lab grown meat or through people switching to the amazing plant-based alternatives, I hope deep in my soul that we can stop the mass killing of these animals and really live a more compassionate life that's in alignment with a better future for our kids and our grandkids and the animals.
Oh, bless you. That's so that's so beautiful. And you are so lovely. I'm just going to share with you what your publicist wrote at the bottom of the form that she sent to me that all of the guests fill out. And I don't usually get a note like this, so I'm going to share it with you and with the listeners. Carleigh has so much enthusiasm for plant-based food, and she absolutely radiates in her social media posts. It's easy to see why her following grew to over 1 million, and I think you will love both her energy and her backstory about making the connection to a plant-based diet. Well, I do. And I'm so, so happy that you spent this time with us today. Just finally, in our last kind of 30 seconds, what would you like people to know, Carleigh, other than that there's a really good book coming out?
Oh my gosh, you're making me cry. That was so, so sweet. I'm so, so grateful that you've given me this platform. And I suggest that people, if they're listening and they're not plant-based, they start with one meal and see how you like it and build from there. It doesn't have to be overnight, but I promise you the benefits are tenfold, and you will quickly see if you just start with one meal.
Perfect. What a beautiful idea. Thank you so much, Carleigh.